Yes, we are live, live, live. Yay. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the second season, but the first time of doing LightWork and LifeTalk podcast live on Substack with me, Allison Rozelle. I'm here with a special guest. I am excited to have Reverend Evelyn Bourne. How you doing, sis?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes, of course. Definitely wanted to have you on here. So, before we jump into our juicy conversation, I'll tell you a little bit about Reverend Evelyn. She's an ordained minister of spiritual consciousness. She's your companion on the path to spiritual liberation, and we are so going to talk about spiritual liberation. Finding freedom in knowing yourself as the God you seek and creative expression as a spiritual practice. I love that so much, so much. So, Goddess Evelyn, I know I just read that about you that's on your Substack.
hmm
But just can you tell me a little bit about your background of how you um became the ordained minister that you are,
hmm
as well as on the path, because most people wouldn't correlate an ordained reverend with spiritual liberation. So
hmm
how did that come? How did you get there?
Okay. How long do you have? No, I will. I will encapsulate it. So thank you again, Allison, for having me. Wow. So, I was born and raised and indoctrinated into Christianity, and I was a solid, devoted Christian, and I discovered New Thought, which is basically the philosophy that um, says that God, the God creator of the universe, all there is actually within us, and that it expresses itself through and as us, right? And having been raised a Christian, believing that God was outside of me, that God was, to my child mind, because that's when I learned about God, that God was in the sky, an old white dude who was often in a not great mood, and who I, for the life of me, couldn't seem to please. So when I ever discovered that concept that the Most High is actually within us, it was just like the top of my head came off. And so I dove into New Thought. I became a licensed practitioner, a science of mind practitioner. So it's like a prayer chaplain. I pray with people and I know the truth for them. And so after 4 years of training to become a practitioner, I then got the call, although I sort of feel like I low key have had the call my whole life, but I actually heard the call to ministry. And I went the Sunday after I passed my, became a practitioner, I entered seminary. So 3 years of seminary. And then the year after I graduated as an ordained minister, I started to deconstruct. And I just was like, okay, dear Lord, why would you take me through this circuitous path? But I was like, why am I going to question? It's actually the way it was supposed to happen. So I stopped questioning and I just dove into it. And when I, sorry if you can hear my neighbor's dog, it's literally on the other side of this window. So, um, so when I discovered Substack, because I was on some other people's email list and they kept sending me to Substack to subscribe. They were all like, we're abandoning this platform and we're all going to Substack. So I just followed. I didn't know what Substack was, but a couple of summers ago, I got another round of those invitations to Substack, and I was like, let me get on here. And so I decided, like, what am I going to write about? And then I thought, I'm going to write about my journey of going from being um, an ordained minister, a Christian, like just fresh out of seminary, to deconstructing and really learning as my bio says, to find the God that I seek in me as me. So that was really my path, and Substack was going to be the vehicle for my ministry, where I wanted to support people who were deconstructing, who didn't have, like, I felt like I was flailing. I felt like I was flailing in the wilderness because I had no idea that, first of all, I didn't know that deconstruction was even a thing. I thought I was the only one. To find out that thousands and millions of people are, waking up and stepping away from that very high control um, religious structure, right? And again, I have nothing against Christianity. I love Christians. I love Christian. It's just not for me. And so
Right.
when I was stepping away from it, I felt very much alone. And so I wanted to be there for the people who were stepping away. I'm not here to lure people away.
Right.
But I wanted to be here as a support for people who are stepping away, who feel confused, and just to have another voice to echo what they're thinking. Like, gosh, spiritual liberation, we don't have to follow what's written in a dusty old book, which is actually mostly what we mostly what Christians follow is what the minister says, as opposed to what's actually in the Bible. It's often interpreted for people. Most
Yep.
people actually don't even most Christians don't read their Bible. They just go in on Sunday morning and the minister goes, let's turn to John chapter 3, verse 2 through 7. And that's the Bible they get all week, is that they get a selection from the Old Testament, a selection from the New Testament.
That's it.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's my circuitous path. I thought I was going into ministry to become a Christian minister, and I came out a wild renegade.
Well, it's so funny because when you were saying that about when you started deconstructing, you felt like, you were the only one. But come to find out, is so many people who are doing it.
Hmm.
And, you know, when I started my journey of deconstructing, I felt alone because, now you can look on a lot of social media and people are talking about it and stuff. But when I started doing it, nobody wasn't really talking about that, you know? Um, and even with people talking about it now, no one seems to be taking the care like what you're saying. It's like they're deconstructing, but somehow they, I guess, 'cause I know there's a lot of religious trauma, right? And
Hmm.
so there are people who may have anger, but it sounds like a lot of what you're doing is supporting them as they're going through that transition while understanding that they can still love God, but just understand God within themselves. That be accurate?
That's accurate. So what I have found is that I'm going to super overgeneralize and say that there's generally two paths when you're deconstructing. And if a person has suffered what they call church hurt, or, religious trauma, whatever, um, they often run yelling and screaming away with their hair on fire, no, never to be seen again, and they become an atheist.
Yes.
Okay. Or there's the person who just one day goes, you know what? I can't buy this anymore. I'm not, this is not feeling good in my spirit anymore. And they sort of veer off in another direction. They might go from being um like an evangelical Christian to like what they call an evangelical, which I think is really cute.
Yeah.
Evangelicals. Um so to move from a very, very conservative, constricted, high control version of Christianity to a more liberal, oh, we love Jesus, everything is good kind of a, right?
Right.
So I am somewhere in the middle where I no longer identify as a Christian, but I am not an atheist. I still, and it's funny, I have a YouTube channel, and the comments that I get from super Christians is like, they're trying to save me, they're trying to restore me.
Yeah.
And then I have, on the other end of the spectrum, I have atheists who call me a fool because I still believe,
Mm,
what do they call it? That God is my imaginary friend.
mm.
Oh, you still believing that? Oh, okay. Oh, you know. So people, the polarization is fascinating. They can't see that each side is doing the same thing.
Yeah.
The super Christians are like, "Oh, sweetie, come back. Jesus still loves you. You could still." And then the other one telling me that I'm ridiculous for believing in an imaginary friend.
Yeah.
Opposite ends, it's like that, um the opposite ends of the same stick.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah. And I get that because I've had that on some of my videos as well. Like I had posted something about Reiki and I got someone on my comments saying Reiki is going to send you to hell. Jesus is the only way. And I'm
Mhm.
like, "Mm, okay, whatever." Um and then I've had someone say, well, you know, if Reiki is, you know, something that's not affiliated with religion, and it's not, then why are you saying that you're channeling like God energy, blah blah blah? Because that's not what you're doing. And I'm like, but for me, I am. I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about what I'm doing. So I get it. You get a lot of the people. It's like, do y'all not realize y'all are both doing the same thing?
So what I believe they're missing is the fact that they are conflating they're conflating the God. Actually, there's several gods of the Christian Bible, right? There's several gods of the Old Testament. And if you look critically, like if you've read the Bible cover to cover, which I have, um, and a couple of Lents ago, I read through the whole New Testament again. Um, you'll find that the God of the Old Testament is not. It's not the same dude as the New Testament. It's not.
No,
So
no.
my stance is that what they're okay. Backing up, what I feel like is happening is they are conflating the. They're assuming that everyone believes that that there's one God of the Bible. Okay, first of all, so we know that's not true, and that God is the God, the one and only big dude. That's it, right? And so if you're doing anything against that dude, then you're in trouble.
Right.
My approach is that I recognize that there are several gods, and we know everyone. Bible scholar. Listen, there are many Bible scholars who have deconstructed when they went too far. They went all the way into research and they found out all these things. And you'll find a lot of Bible scholars are not actually Christians. They don't believe.
Yeah, I've noticed
Um,
that.
yeah, but they have found that in all of the revisions of the texts over the centuries, there was sort of I know that conflation is not a word, but they have conflated a lot of the gods of the Old Testament into one entity. But there were several different God figures in the Old Testament, right?
Mm,
So I think that's part of what you're talking about is that people have this idea that God is that the Bible is God's breathed inspiration
right,
when it's
right.
really a lovely anthology of ancient literature. That's what it is.
Basically, yes.
The New Testament contradicts every book. One book contradicts, and the Old Testament too. The Bible has more
Mhm.
than 2,300 inaccuracies and contradictions. So, my when I talk about spiritual liberation, I talk about freeing yourself from the dogma and doctrine, the man-made rules of religion, and sourcing your freedom from within, from the God that's within you, that's expressing itself as your life.
Beautiful. So let's talk about the embodiment part.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
when you speak of the embodiment of spiritual liberation, can you tell us what that means?
Right.
What you mean by that?
Okay. So, um, by embodiment, I mean living your truth, right? So, um, a lot of the what we learn stuff, it's all here, right? We learn scripture and verse. We follow the rules, and it's all like in the head. But to embody it is to know that, I mean, obviously, God is not physically inside of you, but the spirit of our higher self is inextricably connected with the one, right? And that is within us.
Right.
And so when I say embodiment, I just mean embracing that power and presence that is within each one of us and living from that space, as opposed to living from um, man-made rules and restrictions and living a very narrow, constricted life, being considered as filthy rags, like the very best of you is filthy rags. I mean, you know, from in my estimation, we are born in original blessing, not an original sin, which is, part of the New Thought philosophy, and that salvation is a bit of a scam. Um, in the medieval times and in the Middle Ages, the church sold dispensations. So people were very wealthy people were living riotous lives, but then they were concerned about not being able to get into heaven. So how do you think they built all those cathedrals in Europe, right? It
Mm-hmm.
was from selling dispensations. What is a dispensation? Well, your local priest, you write him a check and he can make sure he has a hookup.
Right.
So you write him a check and he can make sure that, he can get an email to um to St. Peter and make sure you get in. So it's a little it's quite corrupt. But you know,
Yeah. So when I think about the embodiment of spiritual liberation, I think about going from um what you've been taught to believe into
mhm,
that inner knowing of, as you stated, the connection between my spirit and God, what I know to be God to me, right? Because, at the end of the day, it is personal, right?
mhm,
Um, and that is something that I do actually do talk about in my book is who is God to me after all of this? Who is God to me? What does God represent in my life? So I love that you are helping people to take on that energy of the embodiment of spirit and the inner knowing, rather than just going by what you learned from a book, from a person who may have a hidden agenda in what the way that they're preaching that word. You know what I'm saying? So I love that.
well, okay, so you can't take somebody who is fleeing, might be a strong word, walking
Mm,
away from a high control religion and say, let's put that book aside and let's look at this book.
right.
Right? That's still outside of us,
Hmm.
right? I don't believe so. The Bible was canonized, and there was all hundreds of other books that could have been included, right? But at the time when Christianity became the official religion of the Roman Empire, they had a specific agenda, right? I mean, I feel like left to our own devices, human beings tend to be a little bit buck wild, right? Human beings tend to be lawless and, you know, not crazy like mentally ill crazy, but just like
Yeah.
lawless, right? And
Mhm.
so social control was needed. I mean, I was just talking about this with somebody the other day. All our entire civilization in the West, at least in this country, and in the West, I'll say, is based on Christianity. Our calendar, the Gregorian calendar that we work with now, it was settled on 12 months, with one being short, and every 4 years is a leap year to make up for that, gap because of the way the earth is tilted and all that. That was created to properly date Easter,
Yeah.
because there was another system where Easter kept creeping. It kept creeping and creeping. They're like, no, 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 it needs to stay where it is. So they fixed the calendar around Easter. Our laws are based on Levitical law in the
Yeah.
Christian Bible.
Mhm.
Okay. Marriage and by extension, inheritance, it's all based in Leviticus. It's all based in the Bible. So I mean, our whole reality is structured around the Christian worldview. You cannot escape it. I mean, when your calendar is based on a religion, it's inescapable.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that is Evelyn, since the podcast is called LightWork and LifeTalk. So, let's talk about your, like, don't wanna say your life, but as a light worker,
Mhm.
how do you see, how do I wanna put this? How do you take care of yourself as a minister to others
Mm.
who are going through these changes? So how do you keep yourself centered and keep your energy in a way where you can minister to others?
Yeah. Okay, beautiful question. Um, Prayer and meditation. Um, I think that I have prayer partners. So, my first entree into New Thought was through A Course in Miracles. And, thank you, Dina. I see that Dina says this is a good
Yeah,
conversation.
I see
Um,
that. Thank you,
yeah,
Dana.
I, um, when I was in A Course in Miracles community, I was assigned a prayer partner. This was in 2013. She and I still pray together every week. Um, I have another prayer partner. We meet on Mondays, which we just met this afternoon. Um, and when I am back at home in the Northeast, I pray every week with my ministerial class. So we um, have a number that we all dial into every Tuesday morning. But because I'm not the West Coast, but since I'm in the West now, it puts that call way too early for me to participate. So prayer, I am steeped in prayer, and I recommend to everybody, get a prayer partner. Okay, we are our creator did not create us to be lone wolves. We are in this country told that that whole story about rugged independence, that's a bunch of BS.
It is.
Rugged independence is for white men, okay? But for us, for those of us who are spiritual, who have what I call a God-sized void within us, right? It's God shaped. And so nothing but God can fill that space. Not food, not sex, not scrolling your phone, not chasing adventure, but just getting quiet. And because when I said I said connected. It's not really connected. It is one with. So it's different. Like when I plug in my phone, my charging cord, I connect it to the outlet.
Right.
But my higher self is an aspect of, of source. So it's not really a connection. It is inextricably linked together. So prayer, meditation, I journal every single day. Um, and just, staying in community. I have a spiritual community that I am um in community with. And hey, Netafe. So yeah, it's just, I mean, coaches have coaches, right? And so
Yes.
in order to be able to be a minister of spiritual consciousness or any kind of minister, you have to minister to yourself. And then I have a healing circle group that I co-facilitate. It's on a hiatus right now. We had been meeting uh, first we were meeting twice a month, and then we brought it down to once a month since 2022. And then in December, we decided to take a hiatus, and we'll be starting back up again in March. So, I mean, it's just constantly being in service, in the work, in holding the consciousness, and yeah, and serving. I mean, I I don't. Let's see. I don't have any practitioner clients right now, but typically I'll have a prayer practitioner client, you know, that I'll be praying with, and but yeah, that's you got to keep that vibration high, and you
Yes.
have to be what is that expression? Stay ready so you don't have to get ready.
Right?
So that's what it's about.
Nice. So one of the other things that I do like to bring up to people, because you're right, we as coaches, we need coaches. Coaches have coaches. Um, I remember years ago with a group of other healers, we did a series called Who Heals the Healers, right? And so that was one of the things of us talking about how we use the medicine that we teach to help ourselves, and we help each other, right? So having that community, that partnership is so very important. It's so very important because we were never meant to be an island, right? It's so key and vital. And I'm gonna say this for those of us who are of Black African ancestry. We come from a rich heritage of communal people, right?
Absolutely.
And us trying to deconstruct and decolonize the way we look at community is huge. And I think if we can grasp that, of understanding that our spirituality is heavily connected to the community that we serve, that we're part of, and everything else, I feel like the healing would be even greater for a lot of people. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And I mean, the healing circle structure is really a good example of that. Um, I have been a part of, so when I talk about the healing circle that I had been involved with that's on hiatus, it's a little different from a like one-off structured healing circle in a room. So this is what I'm talking about is um when my spiritual community had a building, we often had um healing circles. So we had the person who was receiving the healing sitting in a chair, and then they're surrounded by 7 practitioners, and then if there's other people, then they sit outside of that circle, and we just pray for that person, and we go around. So there are 5 steps to treatment, to spiritual mind treatment. And so we just go around in the circle and pray for that person. And I was at a retreat one time a couple of years ago, and we had this healing circle for this person who had just received a diagnosis. And it was just, it was so powerful. And it was just amazing, amazing experience. And it's those kind of experiences that remind me this is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I came here for, because each one of us, I mean, we sort of joked, when we're going through practitioner training, is that our goal is to work ourselves out of a job, right? Because um, a practitioner stands in the gap for the person that they're praying for, right? But ideally, each of us should and can pray for ourselves, right? But you call in a practitioner like when stuff gets real, right? And you're like, oh my goodness. And I like to say we lend our belief, our knowing, we know the truth for you because we have done the work to clear our vessel to make it so that um, we don't have to wade through our own issues and before we can get to yours, right? Oftentimes, in the beginning, the people will come to you with the problems that you're dealing with, because spirit's like, oh, okay, there you go.
Right.
um, so yeah, it's just community is everything. It's everyone, and I'm not saying that it's like Shangri-La perfect, because if you get a group of
No.
people together, you have a group of problems. But
Right.
when everyone is there with pure intention to support one another, there's not much more powerful than a group of like-minded people getting together and supporting one another.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely. I could not agree more. I could not agree more. The power of prayer is good solo, but when you have a group of people who come together for that
Yep.
common intention, it just makes it so much more powerful. So
Yeah.
much more powerful.
Prayer is energy healing, right?
Yes.
It's energy healing. So when you
Mhm.
get, you know, I mean, we had a healing circle one time, um, for another very tragic diagnosis, and we had the 7 people in the circle, but then we had other people outside of the perimeter of that. And we were praying, and it's like you can sort of feel it ramping up, ramping up. I was doing Reiki. I was doing my Reiki hands. I was, also praying, but I was also doing Reiki. And I just could feel like a crescendo of energy in the room. Sort of felt like a whirlpool of energy. And I had a vision of the top of the roof of the room that we were in coming off, and I could see the blue sky and clouds between the wall and where the pitch of the roof comes. Of course,
Mhm.
this didn't really happen. Was a visualization that I had while this is,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it felt like the roof was being lifted off, and then a young woman who's not a practitioner, but she's been in the teaching, she knows what she's doing. She was behind and to my right, and when we finished, she said, "There was a couple of gentlemen here." And she said, when everybody was praying, she said, I opened my eyes and I looked up, and she said she saw 2 men, 2 figures
Mhm.
from the back. So they were in front of her in a space between, and it was like we were like, I don't know what that was about, but it was just a very, very powerful. We walked away like, It was just so powerful. So we still don't know who those dudes were, whatever, but it was it was powerful. And there have been some amazing healings. Um I mean, we did pray with a young man who he ended up passing away, but that's obviously was the will for his life. I mean, it can't be that we're not there to say, "Oh, you come to a healing circle and you're going to get healed and all that's perfect."
Right.
Because if it is in divine order for that person's time on this planet to be done,
Mhm.
you know, but when we prayed with him, it was just so very powerful. He had a cancer diagnosis and he was very close to the end and he passed away weeks after. But still it was very very powerful to know that we prayed the walls down for him. And so he wherever he went next, I pray that his spirit was happy and felt supported.
Yeah. And, that is something that we have to keep in mind is even when we are doing the healing work, it doesn't necessarily mean that if it is the fate of you to pass, that you won't pass.
Mhm.
But what it can do for you is give you that peace that you need so you can go peacefully. It
Exactly.
can do for you to where when you are transitioning from this life, because death isn't death, it's just taking from one life to the next. So as you go on that journey, our prayers, our energy work, our Reiki, whatever we're doing is hopefully giving you that peaceful journey.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
because if the soul is eternal, right, then
Yeah.
any good thing that we can do for the soul in this experience can only help it. I feel like when somebody passes away, it's like they get in the elevator, the doors close, and
Mm.
we don't know what happens after that. But um yeah, I mean, it's not about, I mean, in the old days, like in so New Thought came about in the late 19th century. In the early 20th century, there were people who were like, they were having miracles. They were praying and broken bones were um being healed and things like that. And in our center there have definitely been, people who came in with a diagnosis and they went back to their doctor and the doctor's like, what did you do? Because
Right.
the scan shows me that the thing is gone. So but it's not necessarily healing has looks the way it's supposed to look, right? It doesn't always mean that you get prayed for and your cancer is gone, but it can mean that we pray for you and your spirit is settled about whatever happens,
Right.
right? So we can't know what healing looks like for any particular person.
Right. That's right. That's right. Well, Goddess Evelyn, I have enjoyed this conversation so much. You've just really given a lot of good information with this. So I appreciate you taking time to sit down and share all your beautiful wisdom with us. And I just want to give a moment to take time to give a shout out to Tracy who joined, Dina, Christine, Sandy, original junior senior. All right. Netta Faye and my friend Naylin, the stickers lady. Yay. All right. So before we started, I actually pulled a card just to kind of give something
Oh,
for uh the um the broadcast. And this came from one of my favorite decks, which is Secrets of the Ancestors. And the card, ironically, 'cause when I saw it, I kind of giggled because I was like, considering who I'm about to talk to. So it's Father God.
nice. I love that.
Father God. Yes. And it says radical truth.
Mm,
Radical
I
truth.
love that. Yeah, I love Oracle card. I'm actually working on an Oracle deck of my own, and
Ooh,
yeah, it's
nice.
interestingly it's a biblical oracle. So I'm taking characters from the Old Testament and characters from the New Testament, and um, making little. They're going to be round, and so that should be quite interesting. So I didn't realize that you did
Yeah.
cards. So when I get
Yeah.
a beta deck together, I'll have to send it to you and have you try it out.
Oh, I
But
would
yeah,
love that.
yeah,
Love-
um I love oracles because it taps into our energy, our personal energy field.
Yes.
A lot of people think that and I wrote an article about this on my blog before I was on Substack. When I used to be fascinated by tarot when I was a Christian, and I was always afraid of it. Because I was told, "Oh, that's devil's work."
Mm, me
And
too.
yeah, and so whenever I found out that the cards themselves have no power, it's you. You are the
Right.
power.
Right.
You are the power with or without the card. And what
They're a tool. That's it.
it's
That's
a
it.
tool. The same way your auntie looks at tea leaves in the bottom of the mug, it's a tool. And so whenever I am in Arizona right now. I live in northern New Jersey, so all of my
Right.
stuff is back home. So I don't have access to any of my cards or any of those things. But um that's a thing. So I sort of felt like, first of all, I looked around to see, like, is there a Bible oracle? There is not. I have not. If anyone knows of one, let
Oh,
me know.
I don't remember seeing one.
Yeah, but I just thought,
Nothing that's coming to mind.
this book is so full, because even though I no longer identify as a Christian, I still love the Bible. It's a beautiful,
Yeah.
wonderful book. And
Yeah.
so I wanted to be able to have access to those characters, sort of pull them out, and so each one has, you know, the character that how they show up in the text. Because just like with tarot and oracle, well, I shouldn't say oracle, but tarot cards, because our subconscious mind communicates to us in images.
Hmm.
Those images have been with us in various different forms, us being humans, for centuries. That gives them power, just like our the Bible is the best-selling book. It's always the best-selling book. And I don't know how many versions, whatever. That Christian Bible is the best-selling book. And so just imagine the power that millions and millions of people reading that same text. But the power is here. So
Yes.
anyway, I wanted to take those characters and breathe life into them and pull them up out of that book and let people work
Hmm.
with them, and and to teach people that the power is here, but you can gain wisdom from that age old story that you know is largely based on mythology and ancient tales.
Hmm. Yeah.
And yeah, so yeah, that's what I'm doing. So we shall see. We shall see.
Netaface says, consider giving your biblical characters ethnic names.
We'll see. Well, actually, that would be confusing, because I want it to be I want to give them, because Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, what? Uh, in those, no. But
Yeah.
that's the names that people know them as. And so that's
Yeah.
where the power comes from, that familiarity. So yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
if you wanted to do a Bible adjacent oracle, and
Yeah.
but
You
yeah.
could probably do it that way.
Yeah. But I am using the names of the actual characters and their characteristics. I mean, I learned that um for the 12 is an important number, as you probably know, in the Bible. And 12 tribes of Israel, 12 apostles, and there's 12 signs of the zodiac. And so on the painting of in the not the Sistine Chapel, but there's a chapel in Italy. There's a painting of the Last Supper with Jesus and all the disciples. Um,
Yeah.
somebody went in and assigned a zodiac sign to each of the apostles. So yeah, so I've pulled that.
Wow.
Yep. So I've pulled that information out. So it's going to be rich with all kinds of, mythology and, you know,
I wanna see that.
yeah. Yep. Yeah. So
Nice. Again, thank you so much, my sister. I
thank
appreciate
you. This
you
was
coming and
beautiful.
talking. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you all who showed up and watched this live. This is part of the podcast, so it is gonna go on my YouTube channel. It's also gonna go on my podcast platforms, which is Spotify, Apple Podcasts, oh, I wanna say I'm on Audible. Don't quote me, but I kinda think I am. I know my other podcast is on Audible, so I figure why the hell not this one wouldn't be, but you could check it out everywhere. So thank you all so much. I appreciate you sending everybody love. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and
You
I'll see
too.
you all next time. Bye
Bye
for
bye.
now.